What was the point of Aztec human sacrifice? By Octavio Benavides. Whenever there is discussion of the Aztecs, human sacrifice is typically the first thing that comes to mind, and for good reason. Human sacrifice was an incredibly important part of Aztec society, but it is often misrepresented. In modern days, many discussions of the Aztec society pre-contact is tainted with an idea that barbarism was an inherent part of the culture, due in part both to propaganda created by the Aztecs, along with justifications for war created by the Spanish. The Aztecs are displayed as a sort of bloodthirsty people who sacrificed untold amounts of innocence to the gods before the Spanish arrived. Due to this reductive viewpoint, Aztec society is rarely analyzed in an unbiased way. With this presentation, I am attempting to create a more thorough, unbiased look into what the exact point of human sacrifice was in Aztec society and what made the practice so important and worthwhile to the culture. Who exactly was sacrificed? While the majority of the sacrificed were either captured warriors or slaves, every member of Aztec society was familiar with sacrifice. An important part of many rituals was empire-wide auto-sacrifice, when blood would be drawn from all men, women, and children. The sacrifice of animals was also an important part of ritual, and what exact animals were killed relied heavily on which god the sacrifices were being made to. Human sacrifice was seen as the highest form of sacrifice and generally was reserved for specific monthly rituals. As mentioned before, the majority of the sacrificed were captured warriors and slaves, which could come from any caste of the Aztec social hierarchy, but sometimes specific rituals called for specific sacrifices. For example, in rituals related to Tlaloc, an Aztec god of rain and fertility, children were the most common sacrifices. They often came from noble lineages and were offered up by their parents. In other rituals, those being sacrificed were made into impersonators, meant to act as physical stand-ins for the gods, mythical heroes, or material goods, such as in the festival of Titual, when a woman would be chosen to impersonate Chiahuacatal, an Aztec god of motherhood. In many cases, being the object of sacrifice was seen as a noble fate. Those being sacrificed were often thrown large, multi-day feasts and celebrations beforehand. For warriors, sacrifice was seen almost as a natural ending and not something necessarily negative. Often, when members of the warrior class were unable to fight longer, they would offer themselves up for sacrifice as means of achieving a noble death. Sacrifices also came in a variety of different methods. The most sensationalized method was the removal of the heart, but sacrifices were also done via mock battles, decapitation, flaying, burning, drowning, and starvation. Sacrifice as religious ritual. For most members of Aztec society, the general reason for human sacrifice was ultimately based in religion. Many of the beliefs of the Aztec people were heavily based in sacrifices being required to keep the gods alive and to keep the world in order. One of the most important Aztec gods was Huitzilopochtli, the patron of the Aztecs and the god of sun and warfare. The rising sun, the rising of the sun and continuation of life was attributed to Huitzilopochtli in his endless battles against the moon, a fight that could only continue if he was sustained on enough human blood. In rituals to Tlaloc, tears were an important mimetic symbol of rain that brought storms. To the Aztecs, the human body was a religious tool meant to keep the gods alive, and sacrifice was just one of many methods. Sacrifice as a reaction to warfare. Sacrifice also played a large part in warfare and the Aztecs' connections with the tribes that surrounded them. Oftentimes, Aztec expansion was done not just out of a desire for more land, but also as means to gather more sacrifices for rituals. It's believed that tribes underneath the rule of the Aztecs would sometimes be made to pay human tributes alongside material goods to the empire. I also believe it's possible that Aztec sacrifice also acted as a method of propaganda for the empire. There are several documentations of large mass sacrifices happening during festivals where the number of sacrificed victims is drastically high. For example, the Annals of Quahilatlan Nahuatl Codex claims the Aztecs sacrificed upwards of 80,000 men in just 4 days. Exaggeration of the number of sacrifices by both the Aztecs themselves and the Spanish were useful tools in shaping the opinions of the Aztecs' neighboring tribes to fear and later hate them. Sacrifice in the warrior class. For the warriors of the Aztec Empire, sacrifice was a core part of their societal duty. In combat, capturing another warrior to be sacrificed was one of the highest honors that could be achieved and was guaranteed to raise one in the empire's social hierarchy. This gathering of sacrifices through conflicts was also seen in the Aztec practice of flower wars, where mock battles would take place between noble warriors. The wars could happen at any time and would be generally done through strictly close combat as opposed to typical means. The point of these wars was not to kill your opponent, but strictly to disarm and claim them as an offering, and winners of these mock wars were praised. Sacrifice and cannibalism. In some specific rituals, cannibalism came as the next step after sacrifice. Most commonly seen following the sacrifice of captured warriors, cannibalism was a strong social symbol of a warrior's deeds in battle. It's generally believed that following the sacrifice of a warrior, a thigh would be given to the emperor, the torso would be offered to the gods, and the limbs would be given to the warrior to consume. Often, this consumption of one's captured warrior was accompanied by a large feast, where a soup referred to as talakatalali, made of beans, maize, and supposedly strips of human flesh, would be made and served. The act of cannibalism was reserved for the highest social classes in the empire. Sacrifice as a reaction to ecological factors. Building on the topic of cannibalism, one theory put forward by researchers is the idea that the extremity of human sacrifice done in the Aztec Empire is a result of pressure from ecological factors such as overpopulation. Michael Harner, an American anthropologist, argues that the more extreme idea that sacrifice was done almost entirely as a reaction to lack of protein in central Mexico, claiming that the majority of victims were sacrificed with the purpose of being eaten afterwards. As mentioned before, many sacrifices, specifically warrior sacrifices, were consumed. This theory of cannibalism being such an important pillar of Aztec society does not hold up very well. Despite the fact that the Aztec population was notably large and that famine was a risk faced, cannibalism was never an empire-wide normal practice and was mostly reserved for socially high-ranking nobles, priests, and warriors. Conclusions on human sacrifice. The role of human sacrifice in Aztec society is not one emerging as a result of societal bloodlust and desire for violence, but out of a complex relationship the Aztecs had with their religion and politics. While these practices can easily seem outlandish and inhumane through modern lenses, the world the Aztecs lived in was a much different one than our own, and the practice of human sacrifice has existed in many cultures across the world in differing forms: witch hunts, witch burnings, crusades. I believe that political power and religion both hold equal weight in the importance that the sacrifice holds in Aztec society, and that in order to understand the Aztecs better, this practice must be viewed not out of disgust, but as a part of the culture of the past.